are back. So, good morning. I just mixed up some paint, so I have just a little bit less than an hour before I have to turn the cameras off and paint some jigs. But it takes about an hour for that epoxy to cure. So I'm just double checking the time here. Make sure we got everything on, right? Sound. Today at the bench, what I'm tying is a 1/2 Barumba, just a plain old black and purple. And this is for an old customer. And he does like a little bit of flash in with his jigs. But today we're using a couple different colors. Oh, and a third one that I didn't get yet. I just noticed that. So we're using just regular Flashabou, the typical, Christmas tree tinsel, right? And he likes these black and purple jigs to have an iridescent Flashabou, red Flashabou, or blue Flashabou. So right now I have about 7 dozen to tie up for him. Trying to make some good use of my time while we're doing this. And let's see, let's switch everybody over. Turn on my face. It's a little high, right? Can't remember what the last video was, but I think I was tying something smaller. Have been messing up with my table again. It seems that it's that way between almost every video. I was messing around with the laptop earlier this week. Oop. And moved everything around on my desk. You might notice right away, right off the bat, I am using a little bit different bobbin. Once I get a jig done, I'll actually maybe show it on screen. It's a Umpqua, right? Is that how you say it? It's a I decided to treat myself, try out a bobbin that's a little bit different style, because you'll also notice that I'm using a little bit different thread today. It's still a size A rod wrapping thread, and it's on a small spool. Unfortunately, I won't be able to get this size A thread from this company on a larger spool. But I have found a nice alternative for the 2/0 thread. They have a 3/0 unwaxed nylon that is a really, really good alternative. There's also a, what's it called? They call it twisted. Basically, it's a couple strands. I'm guessing, I don't know what size. It's a couple strands of nylon thread that's twisted, and it says 6/0, but in using it, diameter-wise, strength-wise, even the texture in your fingers, to me is pretty. It mimics the 2/0 surprisingly well. So it's another alternative. So the thread that I'm using today is a Textreme, and they've been around for a while. I'm guessing 10 years or so. But I've never heard of them, and just discovered them by chance. Made a couple contacts, bought a bunch of thread just to try out. Oop, getting ahead of myself. So I'm really looking forward to testing out more of this thread and letting everybody know my thoughts on it. And, you know, maybe if I'm lucky, offering it on the website. So I didn't count out my pinch of Flashabou, but I'm grabbing about a dozen strands. Give or take 10 to 12, 10 to 14 strands would be just fine. And, you know, I call this, in the beginning I named this kind of an old-timer type jig. And it's because I'm tying it in a way that was quite popular in the 70s, before we had a lot of different alternatives for Flashabou. And this is just the simple way that we did it. We would put the Flashabou on right down the center, right on top of the hook shank, in between the two wings, the top and bottom wing. So I am getting ready to do a big cleanup of my desk. I want to replace this white cardstock that I keep on my desktop. It helps reflect some light. It helps me see the dark color tails against the white background. But as I've gotten a little older and have to rely on the reading glasses, I've also noticed that I'm having a hard time seeing colors like purple against this blue painter's tape that I've used forever. So I don't know if I just have to put a thinner strip down instead of this 2-inch wide strip, or you know, change the color of my painter's tape. But so, like I mentioned, this is a new bobbin. I apologize for that chirping. I'm struggling with, I really like this bobbin. It's a nice bobbin, but I'm struggling with a couple things with it. First off is the tension. And I'm just assuming it needs a little bit of breaking in. You know, you kind of stretch them out just a little bit too far, and then you bring them back in, and the legs kind of learn, you know, where you want them. Some of this is because of the bobbin itself, the material, probably the plastic that it's made out of. See that squeak? Ugh, kills me. But I can get the squeak to stop, but then it's a little bit too loose. The shape of the bobbin, the, what's it called, the knurled part for your fingers, I kind of like, but at the same time it's different, so you don't have the same contact with your hand. So, you know, that would be one way I would kind of control that squeak a little bit. Let me turn my face off real quick. We'll take a quick look at this jig. Very popular color in the lakes and rivers here locally, black and purple. And like I said, we're doing these with, this one has the blue tinsel. He also wants red and the iridescent tinsel. So this is the bobbin that I have. Couple little critiques, and mostly, you know, I'll kind of learn a little bit of muscle memory. Generally, it's the same size as a standard typical bobbin. Because of the size of the barrel, I hold it a little bit different, so I'm kind of just trying to learn where to put my hand, so to speak. It does have the metal feet, the balls, which are kind of neat, a little bit different than on some of their other bobbins that use the nylon or plastic type feet. This is another bobbin from Umpqua. This one isn't bad because it's very similar to, I think I have them on my other desk, but very similar to you know, the standard cheap bobbins that we've used forever and ever, you know, the made in Pakistan or made in India type bobbins. Also to, let's take this out. Also to combat the squeak, I've even been testing out a little bit. This is just old fly tying wax. You know, you break off a little piece and you warm it up a little bit, and you can keep it on your hand to use on your thread. But I also rub the wax on the bobbin to see if that would help. Kind of as a lubricant, so to speak. See, and no squeak. So just playing with different ways to go about using the tool, you know, just learning the tool, trying to make it so it works best for me. I'm considering maybe upgrading some of these old, you know, I've had these bobbins for well over 20 years, honestly. So the ones with the thumb, I always call it a nickel because that's about the size of it. Or some of these with this type of barrel on the end. You know, they're all fine bobbins. I do like the brass feet as opposed to the nylon or plastic. But I'm playing a little bit with the, you know, this new bobbin. Price wise, it's to the, I would never recommend to a new tyer spending anywhere near $20 for a bobbin. It's ridiculous. $5, $7 tops. If you're paying more than $10 for a bobbin, I think your priorities are are in the wrong spot. I'm a little bit more experienced as a tyer, so I guess I could justify spending money on a little bit fancier bobbin. And as I've discussed before, there is a video out there, or I did make a video that I never published, so it's not out there, but out there meaning on my hard drive, where I set a budget. I think I spent, I told the wife $250. I might have spent a little bit over $300, but I had a selection of bobbins. I myself tie with 3 or 4 different types. My fly tying bobbin is a little bit more expensive. I have a couple of the Renzetti ruby tip bobbins. I really like those bobbins. And of course I have over the years used the ceramic bobbins, glass bobbins, and have my opinions on their value to us as tyers. But I also went out and I spent, had a little bit of a budget, $250 to $300, and I bought some high-end bobbins. And I sat and I did this video, and most of the bobbins were awful. the real expensive bobbins that you find in a lot of fly shops, in all honesty, you know, there wasn't really anything good I could say about them. And the video kind of turned into me just repeating what was on their packaging. And of course, you know, their bobbins are the, you know, they're the better mousetrap. So everything about their bobbin was perfect. And not to single out Loon, but I cannot stand Loon's ergonomic handle. It's awful. And I know there's a lot of tires that enjoy them. There's a lot of YouTube tires that use them and think Loon's great. I think it was trash, personally. It's my first cup of coffee. I think I'm a little bit more attitudinal right now. But, you know, I just couldn't be honest with the video. And, you know, I'm not being paid to promote anything. I don't want to be paid to promote something. I'd love to, you know, be sponsored or people send me things to review, but like I've always said with my channel, there's no secrets here. If you have any questions about jig tying and manufacturing and, you know, how we do it, I'm more than happy to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. And I feel the same with products. So, you know, if Loon wanted to load me up with a bunch of things to try to use and give my opinions on, I'm more than happy to do something like that. But, you know, you got to be prepared. You know, I'm not going to try to cut you down, but if you send me something that honestly, you know, $30 for a bobbin, and it's just a bobbin, come on. So that video never got published. Where am I going with this? This is kind of like a weird, very talkative today, but I don't, maybe I'm just trying to squeeze everything into the 45 minutes or so that I have until the alarm's going to go off. So, you know, this Umpqua bobbin, if I'm saying that wrong, put that down in the comments. Oh my God. I think it was $17. It was under 20. So I would, anybody that's looking to buy tools and materials and they're just kind of learning, that's the maximum you should ever spend on a bobbin. And the subscribers that are long-term tires, that are experienced tires, and there's a bunch of us out there that, you know, we've had some conversations. Don't spend more than $20 on a bobbin. I have not yet once found a good reason to spend more than $20 for a bobbin. But I decided to treat myself with this new thread because I do like this size A thread, and when tying production, I don't think I'm going to use the size A thread from the Techstream company all that much, only because, you know, actually this is a good test. I got 7 dozen here to tie for this customer. I just started this bobbin, or this spool rather, so I'll be able to see how many jigs I'll get to do with one spool. Pardon me. So this kind of, I guess this kind of relates to, you know, the thread video that I'm really working on. Let's turn off our face one more time. You know, I've mentioned this before, where I'm talking about the thread, really getting into a little bit more detail about thread, why I use the type of thread that I do. I'm not saying how I'm doing it is the very ultimate best, because there are some considerations I make to stay more traditional, at least, you know, the way I describe it, right? But, you know, why do I use round thread? Why do I use unwaxed thread? Why do I keep talking about these antiquated thread sizes that people just can't find anymore, or it's very, very difficult to find? I didn't quite realize how quickly from the 90s into the 2000s that in tying, right, fly tying, jig tying, the manufacturers and what was available took a sharp turn away from, you know, the sizing convention of, what's it called, the government size, I think they call it, is the ABC sizing, and the aught sizes, right? So those, for rod wrapping thread, that was very, very common. For other nylon threads, it was pretty common. I've mentioned sewing thread that we use, nylon sewing thread, that we used for quite some time, and it was a really nice tying thread, even though it was made for sewing, from Lily brand thread. Those were all aught sizes. But then we've lost some of our companies, like Goodrod and Herders, of course, and Universal Vice. And I'm assuming that Herders and Universal were probably made at the same factory. Danville, right? We don't have anymore. At least in the nylon thread that I liked from Danville. So the aught sizes you don't see anymore. Very rarely. Very, you know, in this company, Techstream, that's kind of how I found it. I was just looking up, trying to Google 2-aught thread. That's going to be bad. Got a couple strands that are just kind of poking down to the, a little bit farther around the hook shank than I would prefer. But if I angle it up, I can just add 1 or 2 more wraps just to make sure that it lines up right across the top of the hook shank. And then I can put my thread back where it belongs. That should be good. But I have tied a fair amount of the smaller jigs with the 3-aught Techstream thread, and I think they look good. They work good. I did place an order for the twisted because I didn't know about it. They actually sent me a couple samples in addition to my original order, and the twisted was in there, and even though it said 6-aught, and I think that's why I didn't purchase it, because I didn't need to test a 6-aught. They sent me some twisted nylon 6-aught, and I really liked it. So I did place another order for, you know, I order about a dozen spools, and I'm going to, as I'm filling my inventory boxes with the smaller jigs, I'm going to make sure that I sit and tie a good bunch of jigs with the same thread over and over, just so I can critique it, you know, kind of in my mind work through it. This jig still has a blue strand right down the outside. I'm probably going to set this one aside and tie a 13th jig, and then I'll throw this one in my tackle box. Just want to make sure he probably wouldn't necessarily notice or even care, but I know, right? Yeah. I got a little sloppy with that. So there's a blue strand right down the outside there, but nothing on this side. If it was equal, you know, if I'm tying these and you got more flash showing like that, it looks just fine, but oh my goodness. So this 1/2 Bobbin, but I only got 3 or 4 left in this bag. That's what I'm painting up today. I need 2 more dozen for this order specifically. I think he took a total of 10 dozen. But behind me on my paint desk, right, that's what I call it, I have so many of those bags that are almost empty with jigs. We've made our runs. I filled my boxes. I'll make another 1, maybe 2, depending on how the summer goes. Runs to the bait shops. But summertime, a lot of my time is custom orders. Is guys, you know, they maybe try a different color, or they fish at a different lake and have success. You know, I get calls for custom orders at that point. But for the most part, my boxes are still full enough where I can just throw them in the truck and make deliveries if I have to. Not sure when this video will post, but we do have the holiday weekend coming up. A little bit difficult too. My daughter is graduating with her master's degree. Very proud of her. So instead of traveling up to the lake making deliveries, you know, we have some family obligation to take care of. So I'm very busy. My work schedule is still a little, not 100% back to normal. So I'm working some different hours than the typical 9 to 5, which kind of eats into my, you know, the time that I would normally turn the cameras on and whatnot. Gosh, I'm getting ahead of myself again. So a trick with this Flashabou, let's get back to the jig at hand. So I wet the Flashabou kind of like you're about to thread a needle, just to align all those tinsel fibers. And I walk the thread back towards the center of the collar, keeping it away from the head. Helps with just locking this on Then I can walk the thread back to the head. Sometimes as you bring the thread around, if it's up near the tip of the tinsel where you're trying to lock it on, closest to the head, it likes to push the tinsel over the edge like on that last jig. That's probably what happened. I wasn't really paying attention. And it wasn't the whole pinch that got pushed over. It was about a third of it. So, but like I said, we're using, you know, about 12 strands. Anywhere between 10 and 14 strands are just fine for what we're doing here. And you do get a lot of flash when you're fishing with these, you know, as you're jigging, as you're fishing these and jigging either aggressively or even kind of gently, as the hair flows and undulates, you still get a lot of this flash in the water. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to put a giant gob of flash on here. Got to shape this collar just a little bit. That'll work. I got a little long on this collar. There's that squeak again. And what I tried to do there, like I said, I'm trying to learn different aspects of this bobbin. What I did when I was tying this jig is I tried to choke up a little bit on the bobbin, just trying to find where my hand should be on this, what would work best. I almost feel like I really need to choke up on this to get the same feeling, even though these bobbins are not drastically different in size. Though originally I think I was choking up back here, but if you see where this lines up, a bobbin like this, it's on the front of this knurled section. This is another umpwa bobbin, but it's very similar to just a typical cheap bobbin. You know, you're probably pinching it here. Again, a little bit different area. One of these bobbins, you know, this is way up, a lot forward compared to this umpwa. So I'm kind of learning, you know, maybe I should try to pinch it up this far, but then you have a very short stem. Even though side by side the stems are the same length this way, but in terms of your working, I don't know if this makes sense, but in terms of your working distance, they are a little bit different. So I'm learning, I'm playing with this a little bit. No, I don't like this jig. I'll show you. No secrets here, right? What time is it? All right. So this collar's a little bit long. It's tied just fine. This is another one. I'm just going to pop in my toolbox. I'll fish this at the spillway and lose it after a couple fish. It doesn't look terrible on the screen, but I'm not 100% crazy about that collar. a little bit wide to me, but we'll take care of that. We'll tie one more. Let's make sure I choke up on this. See, I'm pulling my fingers back on this bobbin, and I think it's the working distance. A couple things on this. This is a little bit wider, so I can only go so close to the head. So now I'm pulling my fingers back to give myself as much clearance as I can. I'd like to really like this bobbin. If I end up getting used to this bobbin and I enjoy it, I'm going to spend $17 for another 5 of them. I want at least a half dozen. That way I could have, if I continue using this size A thread. I think this bobbin is a little heavy to use for thinner threads like the 3/0. But I'll probably show that when I'm tying with the 3/0 a smaller jig. But I like to have red, purple, brown, orange. And that gives me, a couple warm. Maybe they have a lot of really nice fluorescent colors, so it wouldn't be bad to have the fluorescent yellow and the chartreuse on a bobbin of their own, ready to go. Just speeds things up a little bit. When I do the bench show and tell, I'll have to kind of zoom in. Like I mentioned before, these are old IBM benches from the IBM factory. The original IBM started here in Endicott, just right across the river. So you can find these benches all the time, garage sales and whatnot. And this is my dad's bench, and he had added some pine boards on the sides and across the back, and then a small shelf, just to give a little bit extra space to put tools and supplies, and tails are in one corner, and my stapler and all my other tools are in another corner, and then on top I have all my my rack and all my cements and lacquers and whatnot. But in the top of the pine boards that make the sides of this bench top, we got 10 or so nails on each side. So on this side I have all my 2/0 bobbins, all the different colors: red, brown, black, orange, purple, dun. Just all lined up, ready to go, and they're hanging on their own hook. Just picking out a few. There's a few broken tips. I'm getting to the very end of this purple tail. Just taking out some of those standout hairs that don't look like they belong. Let's try to end on a good note. I'm expecting my alarm to go off any minute now. to tell me that that paint is ready. So what I'll do is I'm going to switch benches. I'll paint for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Then those jigs need 24 hours to dry. So I'll come back to the bench, keep tying, you know, try to be as efficient with my time as possible. But this looks like we're leaving on a little bit better note, like a jig that looks like it's supposed to. Ooh. And that squeak, I gotta do a few things to kind of solve that. One is adjust the tension on the feet if I can, if that will make a difference. The wax trick works, but as we just saw, you know, it's only worked for about an hour. So that might not be the best alternative. So one last look. Here we go. Very nice jig, black and purple. Red collars, that seems to be the, you know, somebody read it in a Outdoor Life or Field and Stream, or saw it on a, I don't know, Bill Dance or somebody talking about it. Red collars to represent gills. That was the hot thing, I don't know, back in the 90s. And it's carried over to now. You know, red thread I use pretty much exclusively. But these are nice jigs. I'll make sure that I have some photos added to the video. Like I said, I don't cut anything out. You get to see all the, you know, everything's almost live. I leave all the mistakes in and whatnot. But I will tie up a few, finish up a few of the red tinsel and the iridescent Flashabou. I'll include a couple pictures just so people can see. But it's just a very basic black and purple jig, which is so popular here in central New York State. I've been tying these, it feels like forever. But I think that's going to do it for us today. As always, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Feel free to share any of our videos, as it does help increase awareness for the channel. Check out the website, jworthhandtied.com. I've been trying to keep that well stocked with jigs. Just sold a Universal 2 that was kind of refurbished, and I actually found another one that I'll be working on over the next couple weeks. Once that's cleaned up and ready, I'll also post that vise on the website as well. So, but until next time, guys, keep tying and tight lines.